Good morrow, scholars. Welcome back to Star Wars: Fate of the Jedi, Outcast. Huh. Just occurred to me you could say that a couple of different ways and it would still make sense. Anywho, how you guys doing today? Bob, you said you're good. Uh, Never mind. I have a bed now, so my back feels a little bit better than normal. I don't know. Anywho, we are in chapter 3, I believe. Page 33. Sorry, I'm thinking about the 5 Nights at Freddy's. Let's see. Galactic Alliance Security Blockhouse, Government District, Coruscant. Luke was taken to a GA security building where he was separated from Han, who remained in the building's crowded main lobby, already making calls on his comlink. Troopers hustled Luke into a back chamber where he was searched and relieved of his personal possessions, then briefly holo-recorded for identification purposes. After that, he was taken to another room, this one furnished with a bare table and chairs, where Captain Savar asked if he would consent to answer questions without his advocate present. Luke declined. His next stop was a solitary confinement holding cell, a special one, beyond the Durasteel bars where the glows of military-grade energy shields were. No, okay. There, Luke was unshackled and left alone. A considerable time passed. Luke could not be sure how long it was, as his chrono was one of the items removed from him. And then a visitor was shown in. The man was a Twi'lek, green-skinned, broad-shouldered, richly dressed in black and grey office garments of a style common on Coruscant. His lekku, braintails. I could go into. Never mind. Were wrapped around his neck. His brow ridge often cast his red eyes into deep gloom. The anger on his face and the stiffness with which he held himself made him a forbidding picture. But Luke was delighted to see him. The Twi'lek. Do you guys say Twi'lek? A pilot during the glory years of Wedge Antilles' rogue squadron had lost his right leg below the knee in an engagement, and subsequently returned to the practice of law. Makes sense. His limb, replaced by a prosthetic one, he had performed as an attorney in numerous places across the galaxy, and was now a familiar face in Coruscant litigation, interspersing high-paying cases with advocacy involving pilots or issues of constitutional law. Sounds like a good man. Luke sprang to his feet as the Twi'lek was shown through the cell door. As the shields reactivated beyond the bars, he held in his hand. Noara! It finally happened. Noara Ven shook Luke's hand, but his expression did not brighten. No, it didn't. Not the way we expected. What do you mean? Maybe you'd better sit down. He gestured at the cot that constituted half of the furniture in the cell. I'm fine, thanks. They tricked us, Master Skywalker, and I'm feeling rather foolish at being tricked. We didn't look beyond the rumors that this was all about you leading the Jedi out of the Alliance camp and waging a private war on Colonel Solo 2 years ago. It's not about that? Noara shook his head. The government is actually asserting that, in not recognizing Jacen Solo's degenerative moral and ethical changes, the only way they can say descent to the dark side in legalese. You were derelict in your duty as the Grand Master at the Jedi, and were partly responsible for every consequence of his subsequent abuse of power. In other words, a share of every death, every act of torture, every butchered legal right, every military excess performed by the Galactic Alliance in the last war is being laid at your feet. Yes, it's true. The Galactic Alliance is the reason for Jacen Solo. Again, we'll go over this if you want me to. Luke felt the air go out of his lungs. He sat down. You're not serious. As serious as death, Noara frowned, deepening the shadow cast by his brow. I'm certain they're holding back a related charge of treason as a negotiating point. The maximum possible sentence for that is, of course, death. Luke drew in and then let out a deep breath of hurt. He had to acknowledge that some part of the accusation was valid. He should have consciously recognized Jason's excesses long before he had. That he had not, that almost no one in his immediate circle had done so, was a tribute to the power of self-deception and denial. Of course, others had recognized Jason's fault earlier. Ben, whom Luke had not listened to, Luke's wife, who had kept her own counsel, and had died in doing so. If there was any death Luke bore partial blame for due to his refusal to accept reality, it was hers. While his grief had receded from everyday life, the pain still arose at unexpected moments to stab him in the heart. It was almost a physical pain, like a punch to the gut. He took another deep breath. Yes, a lot happened. We could go over it. I don't have all the books yet. But it's a lot. Noara dragged the other piece of furniture, a skeletal metal chair, forward and sat backward on it, resting his arms atop the back. We can beat this charge too. It will be harder than the fight we were anticipating. It will require a considerable amount of mudslinging. Everyone associated with Jason bears the same responsibility, meaning a lot of people in the wartime government, yet they're not being charged. We can demonstrate that you're being singled out because you're a Jedi. Because you're the face of the Jedi Order. Is that the truth? Is that why I'm being charged? As far as I can tell from the hints I've picked up since your arrest. From the favors I called in while waiting to see you, that is. Explain that. Noara considered his words. You must understand, I appreciate the Jedi, what you do, what you risk, what you accomplish. But not everybody does. You're unpredictable. From a military point of view, which I also understand, you're conceivably the most irritating force in the galaxy. Since I keep moving forward, I'm going to move this up a tad. Let's see, where was I? That brought a brief smile to Luke's face. Dad humored. True, he nodded, unrepentant. We have a sort of loose alliance with chains of command and legal precedent. Following orders is not as important as achieving goals. The alliance's military and ex-military leaders intensely dislike a resource they know they cannot control completely. So is the military behind this, or Dala? Again, we can go over this. The chief of state, but many in the military support her. Noara paused as if reluctant to continue. I apologize. They can actually win this legal war, even if we stomp them to pieces in some of the battles. If we mount a successful legal defense, so much dirt gets spread around that the Jedi lose a lot of public and government support, compared with what you get if the Jedi and the government suddenly decide to work hand in hand again. Or perhaps they have a case that's too strong for us. Sorry. On the one hand, they might offer you a bargain, go free and manage the Jedi under their terms. On the other hand, they might just convict. Then you go to prison, or do what they'd prefer you to, run off into hiding and prove your unreliability and criminal nature. Luke leaned back against the bars behind his cot and whistled. Today it just keeps getting better and better. They've been putting this together for a while. Some of my sources suggest that the order to make this case came down possibly as long ago as a year, maybe longer. Luke thought about that. Then why issue the warrant now? Did it take them all this time to assemble the case? No, the timing, your arrest taking place in a public venue on the first day of the Unification Summit, is obviously no coincidence. It constitutes sending a message to the parties considering rejoining the alliance. Yes. Luke scratched his jaw and thought about it. They're saying to the Imperial Remnant, we're putting a leash on the people who gave you so much trouble over the years. It's safe to come back. I believe so. And they're telling the Confederation. You and the Jedi had a mutual enemy during the war, but now we control them, which is another good reason to rejoin. My thinking matches yours. Also another good reason to exclude the happens this time around. Queen Mother Tenel Ka would not react favorably to the action against me. If she doesn't participate until the next summit, the situation could be resolved by then and she'd have time to cool down. Luke stood and began pacing. His stomach fluttered, either from tension or from the fact that he'd had no meal since his arrest, and he drew on inner reserves of calm, to settle it. Noara, I'm not sure we can change the way we operate within the Alliance, or should. We serve a higher cause. Life, calm, progress toward a fair and serene future. Self-interest and the kind of pragmatism that sacrifices innocent lives don't motivate us the way they can the civilian and military authorities. Noara offered him an unhappy smile. History, as interpreted by non-Jedi, demonstrates that you're wrong. In the records, Jedi often demonstrate these self-serving and destructive impulses. They just stop calling themselves Jedi, like Jason Solo did. Ouch. Your arraignment's in 2 hours. I can have a different set of clothes delivered if you prefer to appear before the judge in something fresher or more cheerful. Luke glanced down at his black Grand Master robes. He winced considering how they might remind a judge of the garments preferred by Jason Solo. Send for my white and tan robes, if you would. Done. Court chambers, Coruscant. At the arraignment, Leia, Han, and Ben, I'm so stupid, waited in the audience, which otherwise seemed to be made up entirely of the press, all with holocams running. A gray-skinned Duros judge, I forget what they were, chosen out of the standard rotation of Alliance judges, turned out to be sympathetic to the Jedi. He listened to the charges, ignored the prosecutor's assertion that Luke was a flight risk, ordered Luke to appear at hearings that would proceed from this event, and released him on his own recognizance. Minutes later, Luke, his family, and Noara then exited the building through a portal Noara knew, but the press did not. They emerged at the 40th story walkway level into fresh air and nighttime darkness, alleviated by pedestrian lights and traffic streams. Luke opened the bag Captain Savar had given him at arraignment's end and began pocketing his personal effects. That was a bad day. I look forward to some meditation. Grim-faced, Leia handed him his lightsaber. I don't think you'll get that chance. Things just keep getting better and better. Jedi Temple, Coruscant. The Jedi Temple's medical center was a complete, if compact, hospital facility. Operating theater, private recovery rooms, common ward, active chambers, therapy chambers, sealed atmosphere rooms to simulate various planetary environments, laboratories, and Valen Horn was now the centerpiece of the neurology lab. Strapped to a deactivated repulsor gurney that was resting on a platform built to accommodate it, he strained against his restraints. Not speaking. There was no one present for him to speak to. They watched him from an adjacent chamber through a sheet of transparent steel that was reflective on the lab side, transparent on the observer side. Luke stood with Master... I've never been sure how to pronounce her name. I'm going to say Silgal, but don't quote me on that. The Mon Calamari Jedi Master, who was the Temple's foremost medical expert. Also on hand were the three other members of the Horn family, Leia and Ben. Gisela Horn, Valen's sister, a lean woman in her mid-20s, wore a look of resolute calmness appropriate to a Jedi. But redness around her large, expressive eyes suggested that she had been crying. Her mother, Mirax, looked grimly determined and seemed unable to turn away from watching Valen. Silgal, her voice as gravelly as that of most of Mon Cal's, spoke bleh. Clinically. What is wrong with me today? Let's see, what did Admiral Akbar sound like? I can't think about it. I can't think of it. Well, I mean, I know what it is, but I can't find the way to form it. The patient is not rational, not cooperative. He continues to insist that everyone he knows, whom he sees now, has been replaced by an imposter. He is paranoid and delusional. Leia became tight-faced. Like Seth, only in a different way. Again, something... Never mind. Seth was on about Mandos, I think. As in Mandalore. Anyway, not long before, while traveling aboard the Millennium Falcon, Leia and Han had encountered the Jedi Knight Seth Helene? I'm going to say Helen because that makes me think of whose line is it anyway. Who had exhibited a mania as pervasive as that which Valen seemed to be experiencing. Experiencing? Yeah. Seth had left their company before he could be evaluated. The similarity, why? Of their behavior sounded ominously to Luke, like something one may have contracted from the other, or something they could have developed from exposure to a common source. I forgot the voice already. His blood pressure is high, at a level consistent with his state of anxiety, Silgal went on, and there are greater than normal levels of stress hormones in his blood. Toxicology, virology, and bacteriology. What? Reports are in their preliminary stages, but have suggested no answer. Basic neurological tests suggest no damage, but we have not been able to employ more advanced scans. Luke glanced at her. Why not? I'll show you. Silgal moved the monitor affixed at head height on the wall beside the viewport. Delicately, because her larger-than-human hands were ill-suited to the task, she depressed a number of keys beneath the monitor. The monitor screen snapped to life, showing a series of 5 jagged lines, like simple graphical representations of extremely precipitous mountain ranges, one above the other. This, Silgal explained, is a brain scan set to display brain waveforms. It can be said to show many different types of data and different types of graphical representation. This is the scan of a normal being, myself as a matter of fact. Now I will show you Valen's first scan. She clicked another series of buttons. The image on the screen was wiped away, replaced by bars of jagged peak and through lines so tightly packed, so extreme and savage that Gisela took an involuntary step back from the display. Silval continued. No living member of any species we know could display waveforms like this and survive for very long. A few minutes after we took this, we took another reading. It and subsequent ones looked like this. The monitor image wiped again. Luke thought for a moment that it had not been replaced, for the screen was almost blank. There were still measuring bars to the right and left of the display. There were simply no lines between. Not one. Silgal blinked at the image. This is the brain scan reading of a dead person. Valen Horn is demonstrably not dead. There is no way a reading of Valen could yield a result like this. But it did. I've seen this before. Luke stared curiously at the screen, then glanced over at Valen, who was glaring at the viewport. Though unable to see through it, he seemed to be staring at Luke. Perhaps he could feel the distinctive presence of the Grand Master. Years ago. Silgal switched the monitor off. That's true. Her voice sounded reflective. Perhaps you should explain for the others. Jason could do that. Deliberately, as a force technique. He did it once during the Killik crisis. Again, these are things that if you want, I can go over. Just let me know. Where was I? Is it a technique you know, Master Skywalker? Luke shook his head. I assume it was something he picked up during his wanderings among all the force groups he visited. He turned his attention to the horns. But where did Valen learn it? Corin shook his head. He's never mentioned it, and I'd expect him to, just for fun. Look what I can do that my old man can't, that sort of thing. He glanced at his daughter. Gisela is more of a confidant. Did I say that right? Yeah. She may know. Gisela looked from her father to Luke. Valen and I knew Jason, of course, but he was a few years older than Valen, and that makes a big difference when you're an adolescent. Jason was out fighting the war against the Yuzhan Vong while Valen and I were stuck in the Maw. At Shelter for the last half of the war. We didn't see him at all during the years he spent wandering, and not much after that. Luke frowned. It didn't sound like the sort of relationship in which Jason would teach Valen an obscure force technique. And how about Valen and Seth? Gisela shook her head, causing her brown hair to sway. They weren't close. We all studied together at Shelter and afterward, but once we were apprenticed, following our respective masters around, hardly ever. Occasionally, one or the other of us would encounter him on missions. We were acquaintances, colleagues, but we weren't social buddies. Luke heaved a sigh. But the similarities are too striking to be a coincidence. Seth also knew an obscure force technique we can't account for. Sorry. Where was I? Another one that Jason exhibited. A force-based paralysis. Sounds familiar. There's just too much missing in what we know about Jason's travels, even his thought processes. Whether or not it has any bearing on Valen, at some point we need to fill in as many details as we can about what he was up to in the years prior to the Killick crisis. Corin caught Seagull's eyes. Is there anything you can do for him to snap him out of it? Dang it. Nothing at the moment. We need physiological experts to evaluate the recordings we have made of him. We need complete toxicology lab work to come back. We need to find a way to complete a brain scan. As far as we can tell, whatever he's doing to thwart the scanner works even when he sleeps. I wish he hadn't awakened from Mirax's stun bolt before we tried the scanner the first time. I guess they could shoot him again. She pressed another couple of switches on the control board. An opaque panel slid down in front of the window, cutting off their view of the malevolently staring Valen. Mirax started, then reluctantly turned back toward the others. Let's go upstairs, Luke said. Sit down, get some caf, and figure out what to do about this. And other problems. Ben, I want you to exercise your investigative skills and see what information you can get me on the bounty hunters we encountered today. Will do. Will he be all right left alone? Mirax's tone was soft, full of pain. He is being watched constantly on monitors by my staff. Seagull sounded confident, reassuring. They will also look in on him personally every half hour to an hour. He is not strong enough to break through his traps, and as you know, like his father, he lacks telekinetic strength. He cannot free himself that way. It's true. Or is it? Anyway. She led them from the chamber. Luke patted Corin's back as they departed. Did you have any troubles with the authorities? We didn't wait for them. We didn't wait for him. Just threw the boy in Mirax's speeder and came straight here. Valen could sense their departure. Bright lights in the forest, somehow approximating those of his family and respected teachers, grew more distant. He smiled to himself. They were nowhere near as smart as they thought they were. No matter how much research they may have done, they did not know all his secrets, including the one that was going to free him. He closed his eyes and looked for other lights in the forest, tiny ones in nearby pockets and streams. Individually, they did not hold much life, but their collective biomass exceeded that of all the sapient beings on Coruscant. They were the insects, and though he had not done so in years, he remembered how to be their friend. Now he needed them to come here. He needed certain species that he could convince to crawl out of gaps in the temple walls, march up his gurney, and consume just a small portion of one strap holding him down. One strap, and then when his nurse came in in an in-person visit, one lunge. Valen would escape and find his way to where the real people were. A two-tone musical alarm awakened Luke. He sat up, glancing around his darkened temple quarters, and saw his monitor lit. Seagull's face displayed on it. Master Seagull, what time is it? Middle of the night. Valen Horn has escaped. Luke sighed at the inevitability of those words. This day. How long ago? 20 minutes or so. His night nurse, apprentice Romor, I guess, is not badly hurt, but has a concussion. Do we have any leads on where Valen went? Better than that, we have the tracking device I planted below his skin in the event of such an occurrence. He will begin to feel it when the local anesthetic I injected there begins to wear off, but that gives us a few hours still. Unfortunately, he seems to be spending a certain amount of time traveling through the Undercity, so our signal is intermittent. Luke rose and began putting on his white tunic. Why did I say it like that? Alert the other masters. Assemble all the Jedi Knights present at the temple, that the temple can spare. Sorry. Let Han and Leia know. I'll be in the Great Hall in 3 minutes. And the horns, they don't need to know. Whew. I apologize for how much trouble I am having. Yeah, they name dropped a lot of things that you probably have no idea of. If you ever feel like, even after the series is done and people come back, or you decide afterwards to read or listen, I suppose, I can give you a sort of history lesson of what's been going on in the 40 years since the end of the movies to this, the final story before Disney bought Star Wars and expunged all of the old canon. I think it'd be a lot of fun. I could get like a graph or something I could put up here, have like a really cool board for the timeline and everything and how everything interconnects. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll try and have some more lightsaber practice for you guys. Can't think of anything else. I'm getting kind of hungry, so I might go make something to eat. Excuse me. So until next time, goodbye everybody. Oh man, the voice is, even though I don't really do much to change it, it's still like really difficult. You guys should try it sometime, just so that you can appreciate the trouble I put myself through.